I am Richard Garner. I'm with Breakthrough Fitness. I'm a personal trainer, but I'm also a member of the board of the Chamber of Commerce with HEB. And we have a success group. We divided our board into several groups that have different activities, different responsibilities. And one of them is the Success Series that we are putting together to provide really your networking meeting kind of on steroids, more information. We love that we have different people able to speak to our groups, but 6 times a year we're doing this so that we hit each of our 3 different networking groups twice. So this is the second time we've been here at Tony's. We've done 2 over at Dos Amores, and our next one will be with Susan Shaw over at Sawgrass, so something to look forward to. Today we're talking with, our topic for today is From TikTok to Time Clock, which is great. I love the alliteration, and very, very engaging. Our speaker, I'm going to read his bio for you, C.J. Cook. He is born and raised Texan, grew up in the Grapevine Colleyville district, and he has been married to his beautiful wife, Brooke, for 7 years and has a 1-year-old daughter named Callie. I'm friends with his parents. I've known them since way, way back, so I remember when CJ was very little. And I was just reminding him that we got his dog when he used to have a golden retriever that they, for some reason, kept getting away, and Kevin, his dad, said, hey, we need a good home. So we've had his dog. So we haven't had a connection to his family for a long time, even though it was indirect, but through his dog. His first job, though, was at Chick-fil-A, same as my daughter, had the same thing. When he was 15, he worked in many capacities for the company, including serving on staff for Chick-fil-A corporate, traveling around consulting with operations for new businesses that are starting up. Over many years, CJ has had many people mentor him, growing his character, growing his leadership, developing his sense of purpose and identity, and gaining skills to reach lifelong goals. And when that happens to you, then one of those goals is getting to be a Chick-fil-A operator, being able to then turn around and do what we're doing here, which I thought I might take a little plug. If you haven't done Challenge by Choice, I haven't thought about that, that's coming up next year. That's a good opportunity for you to be able to give back. CJ finds most joy and reward from getting to do the same for others, and is immensely grateful that Chick-fil-A provides an opportunity to pay it forward and impact others' lives, both inside and outside the restaurant. So let's give a hand to CJ and welcome him to our group. All right, if you've been to one of these before, one of the ways that this is presented is either in a discussion or a presentation format. So we do have the slides that Lindsay put together for us that will kind of cover the topics, but I thought it might be more comfortable if we just sat down and had a conversation with y'all and go over some of the things that CJ has learned by putting together his program to bring kids into Chick-fil-A. So the first area is understanding the next generation. So, and we have several questions, but I'd really, in your mind, as we're going through this, think of some things that you might like to know. If we don't cover it, we'll have an opportunity for you guys at the end to ask some questions of CJ as well. All right. So CJ, what unique strengths do younger employees bring to the workplace, and how can business harness those strengths effectively today?
Well, good to see you, Richard. Before I get into the question, I would just say I went up to him a minute ago and I put out my hand as if I'd never met him before, and he says, I knew you when you were 10 years old. And I went back to being a 10-year-old with my 2 golden retrievers, one that he took. So just funny getting to come back home. I've been in the HEB area for about 2 years. Grew up here until I was 18, but came back at a different point of life when business owner, father, just kind of different things. And so very cool to be back in HEB and be a part of the chamber. I would also just say very humbled to even be considered to talk about this, because I don't consider myself an expert. But kind of what Richard mentioned, I've been with the company of Chick-fil-A. Next year will be 20 years. I know I don't look that old, but I started when I was 15. So for me, it's a long period of time of getting to work with, as you can probably guess, in Chick-fil-A, I'd say maybe 75% of our staff is under 25 years old. And so that gives me a unique opportunity. I view that not as, well, there are challenges, which we'll definitely get into, but more an opportunity to work with people who, you talked about strengths. So always high energy, right? Very impressionable and very teachable. One of the things I try and teach our leadership team is a lot of these kids who are coming into the workforce, you don't know what kind of home they may have come from. And one of our core values at our restaurant is to create a home away from home. And that word home for some people may mean a good thing, and for other people it may be a broken thing. And so we get the opportunity to start with these people and these impressionable young folks who are starting their careers to get to learn conflict resolution, to get to learn working with people who are different from them. Excuse me. People are getting to learn how to problem solve through difficult issues in the workplace, right? Honestly, things like showing up on time and just things, they're very impressionable, I would say. I would also say very creative. If you're not leveraging the influence that they have, they're very aware of current trends going on. If y'all probably, I'm not a big TikTok fan, or not a big TikTok user. I'm intrigued by its value that it could add to your business quite a bit. And so we have a girl who is kind of in that younger age group who handles our marketing in our restaurant. She's very aware of kind of the current trends that are going on, and you get to capitalize on different things that you may not be aware of, right? And then also just tech savvy, that kind of comes with that. And then last one I would say is they're very in tune with work having a purpose to it. Sometimes it's tempting for work to turn into, let's say, a 9-to-5 job, not at Chick-fil-A, that'd be not a 9-to-5 job, but clocking in, clocking out, and that not being, them not getting to get as much out of it. I would say that the younger workforce is very in tune with, how do I make this work meaningful to my life, and I'm putting myself into something that's bigger than myself. So those are the strengths, I'd say. We can talk more about a lot of the other things with them. So
Yeah, in fact, that kind of lead on to the next question that we have, which was really what motivates them. What's going to drive these younger? Obviously, we all go to work because we want to get compensation. We want to pay. We got to pay our bills. But as a younger person, their motivation may be very different. So, what do you find best engages the youth into the workforce?
Yeah, so something I would say about beyond just the pay sometimes is what gets people in, or at least is kind of something that gets them engaged in thinking about the opportunity, but it's not what keeps them there. And what keeps them there, there's a book, if y'all have ever heard of an author named Pat Lencioni, he's kind of a leadership speaker. He has a book called 3 Signs of a Miserable Job. And the 3 signs are anonymity, meaning am I known at work? And then the second one is irrelevance. Does my work matter? Kind of to what I was speaking of before. And then the third one, immeasurability. So am I doing a good job? And so I would say those are 3 things that I try to get my leadership team to focus on, and we build systems in our business around that. So the first one, anonymity. Am I known at work? If I show up, am I just a body? Am I just tasked with things versus do I know the people that I'm surrounded with? I liken this in my experience to, I had a period of time where I was moving around a lot and I would go to different churches for myself. And if you're just going in the back and able to fade away and nobody asks if you were there, or that accountability type thing, that makes it very easy to step out and consider another option. So I'd say it's very similar from a workplace standpoint. So if they can go in and they feel known, if you are only putting in front of them measures of success without getting to know the person, then that's going to be really difficult. I would also say we have different recognition kind of systems in our business. We do Employee of the Month. We base it off of a internal group message shout out channel that we do. So let's say I notice on a shift that someone has done a good job. We put that in the shout out channel, and within a month span, the person with the most shout outs is going to be the Employee of the Month. And we kind of usually rotate that through 4 of our core values. And for this month, it's creating a home away from home. For next month, it's pursuing what's next, or whatever it is. And so Employee of the Month, doing shout outs. Our marketing coordinator, she also does Team Member of the Week. And so just kind of focuses on, this is Shelby. Shelby's a senior at Birdville, and she's pursuing this school, and just giving them ways to feel known at work. I know an operator who's a mentor who says, home is where they hang your picture. And I've always liked that, because how often in our business are we putting pictures of the people who are part of the workforce? So those are a few things. I would also say, beyond just those 3 that I mentioned, the younger generation, if you think about it, grew up during the pandemic, and that's just such a unique circumstance that they went through. And think about what came with that. Their parents maybe were working from home. They were doing Zoom meetings with class, right? The social aspects probably were a little bit more difficult. Work from home became an option that probably none of us going into the pandemic realized, or that wasn't a thing, right? You always had to go to work. And so I would say there's been a shift in the younger generation around well-being and more mental health and wholehearted care of the person versus what I grew up with is more of a hustle culture. So, and I'm sure every one of us here as business leaders, we're very ambitious and we want to push to the next thing. That's not to say that they don't have that. It's just to say that there is an emphasis on person care, that how do we leverage different resources within our business to make sure that they receive that being met where they're at in things. So yeah.
Good. You mentioned in your bio about being mentored by several different people, and probably most people in this room have experienced that one way or the other, being mentored by somebody or hopefully mentoring somebody else. But what are the challenges? I mean, you talked about also working as Chick-fil-A growing up, so you were in those shoes actually, but what are some challenges with trying to bring up next generation's leaders through mentoring?
Yeah, I would say one of the challenges is, as you can probably guess, just the experience level. So it kind of goes without saying, but people who are younger aren't going to have the experience that you're necessarily needing in a specific job. I hear stories about job postings that say you need this type of bachelor degree or this much years of experience, and sometimes that's just not feasible with that younger generation. That doesn't mean that they're not willing to learn. You just have to be willing to put in the investment on the front end. And so the inexperience is more of a again, you get the opportunity to inherit this person. We have 14-year-olds with 15-year-olds, and a lot of people would tell me, well, I wouldn't say risk to that, but there's some limitations to that just based on just federal rules and whatnot. And I would say that that's actually, I started when I was 15, and I'm grateful to be where I'm at. We get to start people young and mold them to what a good workplace culture looks like, and to model what a great workplace culture looks like for these impressionable folks. So that is a challenge, but if you're willing to do the work on the front end from an investment standpoint, it can be worth it. I would also say all these challenges are going to be across the board, no matter if they're young or old. So we try and make sure that from an interview standpoint that we're finding folks who have character first and then can learn competency second. Competency, at least in Chick-fil-A, obviously depending on the industry or job, can be taught. But character is something that is very difficult to teach. It's probably a little more teachable with the younger generation because they're still in that moldable or impressionable years, forming years, but it's still very difficult to teach those things. So we try and make sure that the people we are bringing on are teachable and are willing to learn the things that we have to invest to eventually get that ROI on their return. And so I would say another challenge would be that maybe growing up, I grew up very much with kind of a revere for people in the structure of leadership and things like that. I would say from a younger generation, that's not guaranteed. That has to be earned. And whether that's fair or not, it is what it is. And we have to do our part as leaders to earn the right to be heard. I did a ministry called Young Life. That was a kind of tagline, earn the right to be heard. And y'all probably also heard the other side of it. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so even though that can be difficult sometimes in my personality, I want to just get to the work and I want to get to the tasks at hand, seeking to understand where that person's at, getting to know them first, trying to find where the motivation is, helps me earn that right to then coach them and mentor them through the work.
Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things I've mentioned to CJ, and I do this myself. I'm one of the things I'm most involved with at the Chamber is the leadership program. So I've been trying to recruit him for an upcoming session whenever he's available. But one of the things that we talk about is the different leadership styles. and we want to hear from different people, whether it's law enforcement or it's safety or the different services that the city provides. And I'm sure as a business owner, you've had to incorporate several different leadership styles. What adjustments do you feel like you've had to make when it comes to then trying to lead kids as opposed to running a business?
Yeah, I kind of in prep for this talk, Chick-fil-A has kind of an internal, and I would actually, they partner with this doctor named Dr. Megan Gaheny, and she has a book called Gintelligence. So all these things we're talking about are not just for the younger generation. It's more a topic of the difference between different generations, and we all come from different backgrounds and circumstances. And it's really, how do you bridge those gaps? You're asking about differences in leadership styles. The example that comes to mind from that material is she talks about an operator is texting their team members, and the younger generation, when they see a period at the end of a text message, they interpret that as, I would say, hostile or curt or tense.
Correct.
Right. And what's funny is I heard this story. This operator was sending out messages to their team, kind of bulletin messages, put periods at the end of their sentences because that's what they're used to. And the younger generation, right, the younger generation sees that as, oh, this is very formal. This is very I'm in trouble type message. And so learning to seek to understand why that is, because there's this statistic that shows that the younger generation, a lot of them learned to text before they learned how to write, which is kind of wild to think about. But through texting, it's intended to be this informal thing. And when it turns into this very formalized way of writing, it seems like they're in trouble. And so I guess I just mentioned that more as how do we seek to understand? Because if you didn't know that, you would think, man, they really are not very receptive to the messages that I'm trying to send, or they think that I'm always very tense as a leader. And so I would say for me, adjusting my leadership style, I choose to be the Chick-fil-A cow more often than I would care to admit, simply to put myself in a position where the team sees me not be the boss. I try and encourage feedback culture in our business, and so we have different systems that we have, and sometimes it's more just off the cuff. Hey, tell me what is something that you think could have gone better today, or something we could do better in our business, and opening up kind of a transparent, humble posture as a leader, because if you don't do that, you're going to come across as maybe what we were talking about before, just a boss who's all about the work, and we have to be willing to meet them where they're at and be transparent, be humble. With the feedback systems that we have in place, I always tell our team, don't put a question you're not prepared to answer. Sometimes I get afraid of those feedback things because the first time you put it out, be prepared. You're going to get some really tough feedback. But the more you do it and the more you show response to the feedback that they are putting in, it kind of goes back to the am I known question. Am I being heard as well?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in communication. I've told people in my bachelor's program that what I enjoyed the most was a class I took at TCC on communication. I think I've used that more than anything else I've ever learned in college. But knowing your audience.
Yeah.
So in what you're saying just kind of feeds into that. Talking about the different communication styles, getting feedback, whether it's from your employees or your clients, is critical. But you got to know who's your audience. So what are your best tools for getting feedback or communicating with those employees?
Yeah. So getting feedback. I would say y'all may have heard the phrase "clear is kind." When I am setting expectations for my team, you have to be careful of subjective language. So things like service, work ethic, communication, professionalism, these all sound like great things, but they mean different things to different people. And my version of work ethic, I need to define exactly what that looks like. So when I say, hey, I need you to be or communicate better in this way or that way, I need to be more clear, whether it's on a role description that I put out for the team, whether it's I put it on the wall during a shift so that it's easily accessible. I try and teach my leaders, you can't be everywhere, so how do you put things up throughout the business that if you weren't there, they would be able to find a resource nearby that echoes what you're trying to implement. So objective language, I need you to do this, this, or this, instead of like the subjective, well, that could be left up to interpretation. So I would also say calling up instead of calling out, again, going back to that, you being the boss or you being the supervisor who has certain expectations. I'm a big believer of, if you have to call out, seek to understand where they came from first. Second thing, call them up into their potential, because if you're just calling them out, that comes across as maybe irritable to whatever happened, versus, hey, I believe in you, I see what you're capable of, and this is not a part of that. How can I help you? How can I support you? Let's meet in the middle. What can I do to help you succeed in this role? So those are main things for me. And then I would also say something I didn't get to mention on the effective communication style question. Younger generation folks are very interested in the why behind things. We can't just say, hey, this needs to happen this way. Especially for a for-profit business, I've learned through error more than trial that if I'm not careful to share the why in a for-profit business, it can come across that we're simply doing it for more money, which we all know is not for the money, it's for the ability to be resourceful and continue growing the business. And if we want to build something great, we have to have resources to do it. But if you don't share that with the team in a for-profit business, they're not going to buy into that. And that kind of goes back to being a part of something bigger than themselves. A lot of younger folks are not going to want to be a part of something that's purely for the profit of a business. Mm-hmm. So that would be another challenge.
Do you have any specific tips that we could actually implement in our own business that would help us be more effective communicators?
Yeah, I would, again, a lot of this goes back to seeking to understand before being understood. We implement regular one-on-one meetings with people in our business. We also create a pathway for growth. So wanting to be a part of something bigger than themselves, wanting to have checkpoints for what it looks like to grow. I have a mentor who says, work is like a roller coaster, and the moment it stops, they want to get off the ride. And so how do you create a clear pathway? We teach in orientation, hey, we're so glad you're here. You start at, let's say, $12 an hour. Here's exactly what it takes to get to 13. Here's exactly what it takes to get to 15, and so on and so forth, so that right at the beginning, they already know, and you get to put it in their hands. And now you're not the enemy who's withholding from them. You're actually an advocate for, hey, how can I support you? How is your checklist going? Anytime that dramatically decreases the team members who come up and say, hey, I want to raise. Okay, well, we've made it clear how to get it. How can I support you? Those are systems that we implement. And then just in regards to the feedback system, again, seeking to understand, being willing to hear their side. I would also just say that clarity is kindness piece. Giving very clear expectation is going to set you up really well.
Good. You mentioned before about having the majority of the employees 25 or younger, but I know that you've got some older employees as well. So what are some things you do to help bridge that gap so there's not a us and them kind of mentality?
Yeah, I would say, so I have two of my top leaders who are 30, and then two of my other top leaders who are maybe 55 plus. And so it's funny to see them at a leadership meeting because we have very opinionated leaders. They're very passionate about what they do, and that's a great thing in some ways, but we have to wrangle it in. We have to make sure that we're all on the same page. And a big part of my job as the owner-operator is, how do I make sure that what the two different perspectives, they're both valid. It's not that one's right and one's wrong, it's that they're both right, and how do we come to a middle ground in between? Teaching them how to make sure they're hearing the other side and validating, hey, I hear what you're saying first. seek to understand first. And you have to give that, it's almost two conversations in those meetings. I need to make sure that your side gets fully fleshed out, give it the air to breathe, and then some. Okay, I hear your side. We feel like we're on the same page. Do you mind if I share my perspective where I'm coming from on this? And you have to have that separate conversation. A lot of people mix the two conversations interchangeably, and it just becomes this two people just talking at each other versus let each side have their air to breathe so that both perspectives can be heard, and then you can find a middle ground for both. That'd be the biggest thing between two different types of generations. I would absolutely encourage that book. It's called Gintelligence by Dr. Megan Mahaney. I can show it to you guys later if y'all want.
We'll include that in whatever we publish here. We'll post that. Good. Talking about the younger generations, I think one of the most frustrating things for employees is to train somebody up only for them to go on to someone else, especially if they're going to the competition. What are some things that you are able to do with a younger generation to try to have them think long term? This is not just their summer job, but maybe something like you that you could do for life.
Yeah, and I kind of come from a heart of, at the end of the day, maybe this is just the restaurant industry. I know that very likely 95% of the people in my business are not going to be there long term. I would rather embrace that and kind of address it as it is, not treat it as an elephant in the room, actually talk about it with the employee and say, hey, by the time you leave this business, I want you to be a better version of yourself. How can I support that? The ways that we do that is giving them growth opportunities. If you invest in your people now, if you have that mentality of they're just going to leave, you're going to miss out on a really worthwhile worker, even if they do choose to leave in a year or so. I would say from a hiring perspective, maybe you want to balance out the number of people who are. We try and make sure that there's at least a year's worth of time with each applicant on an interview standpoint. But I would say, what are the growth pipelines and growth methods that we're trying to implement in the restaurant to make sure that they do feel like they're still on the roller coaster. They're still moving forward. It's still within their hands. If it's the moment it becomes in the employer's hands, you lose them in a sense. You lose their drive to be a part of it. When it's in their hands, they want to continue moving forward. I would also say one of the benefits of Chick-fil-A is that there is a lot of upward mobility. And so I don't know what that's like for every business, but how do you find ways to give more responsibility in spaces that you may not have thought about? What are the strengths that someone may have that you could do it yourself, or you could give someone something that they would be passionate about and they get to own on their own? They're hungry to learn. They're hungry to grow. You just have to be willing to look for it and invest and trust that it may not go exactly how you would want it, but they may even do it better than you could do it. Kind of with all those strengths that we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah, I love the illustration of the roller coaster because I can see that when and my kids have done the same things. Like this job is not fun anymore. I want to do something else. Well, that's why they pay you to go there, because it's not always going to be fun. But what are some things that you can get when you talked about kind of job ownership? What are some things that you've tried that have worked for you to help you to get them to feel a little bit of ownership or loyalty to what they're doing?
Yeah. So I've been an owner-operator at Chick-fil-A for 2 years. You kind of mentioned I've been with the company for a long time, worked in the corporate office for 2.5 years. Have seen a lot of different teams, seen a lot of different leadership structures. I came into my business 2 years ago. Okay, this is the people that I want in certain spots. I realize now that you have to be very open-handed about that and cater that to the people just as much as to your vision of what it looks like. So an example is I had not considered what team care or maybe an employee value proposition type focus would be. My hands were in everything, and that was kind of falling by the wayside a little bit in our business. There was a girl who was basically the most quintessential Chick-fil-A employee you could ever think of, loved our team, was doing outings with the team, coordinating stuff, recognizing our team, and I was thinking, why don't we just put her in a culture and care coordinator role, make it official, give her a raise, and give her an opportunity to own something that she's already doing well. She helped me with recognizing birthdays, recognizing anniversaries, setting up outings, running the Christmas party, just coming up with gifts for Employee of the Month, coming up with the system for how we choose Employee of the Month. And so that's just an example of getting to know your people and knowing where their strengths are. They may have more to offer and if you're creative and willing to kind of be flexible with what your business looks like, could they help in a certain way that makes them feel really valued and seen in a space that you may have not considered before?
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah, I've participated in a lot of different marketing seminars, programs, how people do things. But for me, the bottom line is return on investment. If I do this, what am I going to see? And you're talking about some great tools, great investments you're putting into these. Do you have any examples or stories where what you've done actually made a difference? How you've seen the payoff?
Yeah, investment-wise, kind of in those systems. Yeah, so maybe this is similar to your previous question of just what are some systems to retain those folks who are considering, leaving at some point. Chick-fil-A does a great job since I think the 80s. They've given away millions of dollars in scholarships, and every team member has the ability to opt into a $1,000, $2,500, or $25,000 scholarship. You have to be at Chick-fil-A, and you can get it once a year, 4 times for a college degree. And so that's one kind of way to leverage a benefit. They have they have to have skin in the game in the sense that I need to be at Chick-fil-A in good standing in order to get that scholarship. You don't have to rely on the big corporate version of Chick-fil-A to do that. You can actually implement those things internally as well if you wanted. And I've seen operators who pool together internal scholarships as well, beyond just that initial benefit. So that's just one example of ways to invest on the front end. Again, I guess I would also add just back to that, how do you create systems where the team member feels like they're moving forward? That takes a lot of investment. It may feel like it's working on something that retention is hard to track in a sense, and it's hard to guarantee. But if you work on it, it will increase your retention over time.
Yeah. And a big part of what we're doing with our youth is not even always retention, because it is your business, but at the same time, we're investing in our community by raising up another generation. Again, going back to the challenge by choice, I like the fact that I know that several of the students are going to move away to different states, but some of them will come back and be new business owners. So do you have an example? Is there something in your mind, this was my star example, and this is why I do it? Because someone who you raised up and now they're successful somewhere else, you can say, I'm going to keep doing this because every once in a while we get one of those.
Yeah, a lot of examples. The one that comes to mind for me, first, I guess I would say, you mentioned it kind of in your introduction for me. I came to Chick-fil-A as a 15-year-old. My parents were going through a divorce at the time. Home life was a little bit unstable, and the operator of the Hurst-Euless Chick-fil-A right over here, Ernie Flores, I believe he's a part of the chamber. Shout out to Ernie. He took me in and created a home for me away from home, and I get to pay that forward to my team. I also went to college in Austin at UT and Hook'em Horns, and worked with an operator there for 7 years, who during a season of my life where I didn't have as much direction with what I wanted to do long term, but he showed me what an honorable businessman looks like, honorable father, honorable husband, and showed me that work can be a really noble pursuit. Running a business is absolutely worth it if you do it with integrity, right? So I say all that to say, for me, they paid it forward to me because people poured into them. I get to pour it forward to other folks for me, and that's why I do what I do. The example I'd come up with, I was in the program I mentioned before. Basically, this program is you go around the country and you help stores open for their first time, or you're kind of a stand-in interim manager for stores that are transitioning between owners. I went to this store in Evansville, Indiana. I was there for 7 months by myself as the top leader. Didn't know the city, didn't know the team. And this team they were a rambunctious young group of kids, I guess you could say. It was a bit difficult on the front end to kind of figure out, okay, how do we work with these folks? I remember specifically this one team member, me and my wife both worked in the restaurant at the time, And we heard this kid named Brandon, who off to the side had some colorful language about me and my wife. And I could have just seen that and said, okay, done, moving on. Something, for whatever reason in me, said, I need to get to know this kid. I need to figure out what it is that is the problem. As I got to know him, I found out that his father had abandoned him. They were living in a trailer house. He basically said when he's 18, hey, I'm leaving. This is yours now. You're the man of the house. And he lived in this trailer by himself and was working at Chick-fil-A at the time. As I got to know him, as I got to pour into him, as I got to call him up and coach him and help him grow, he not only continued working at Chick-fil-A, he became a leader at that Chick-fil-A, led the business in a lot of great ways, grew the metrics of the customer experience scores, and we keep up very well, and he's doing very, very well now.
So. That's awesome. Good to hear. Yeah, I know that hiring youth can be an intimidating thing, but Chick-fil-A has always set a great example of how to do that, and so we appreciate your insights on how we can do that as well. Any questions for anybody about maybe some specific examples you've done or clarifications of something that CJ's shared with us?
How many employees do you have?
We have about 60 right now. So, as I said, maybe 75% of those are about under 25 years old. I'd say 90% are under 35 years old.
Could have just hit it out of the park, that bombed, and what did you learn?
That's a great question. So, maybe not bombed, but definitely had its ups and downs to get it to its current version, that culture and care coordinator role. I thought, hey, great, this is someone who gets to care about the culture and care, and I don't. Like, I've got bigger fish to fry. I was a little naive in thinking that I could give free rein in that space, but what I learned is that if you don't give clear expectations or clear, hey, this is what your focus is, this is what my focus is, this is the guardrails between you and me, here's where my role comes in. Also, as the owner, you can't replace yourself. You can't replace your level of care, and that was a lesson that I needed to learn very early on. There were challenges at first as we navigated what that role looked like for, hey, what if we did this, this, and this? Okay, well, that's not really that's not feasible within our business, within the budget constraints. And for a season, there was a lot of seeming like I was just saying no to a lot of things, which made me feel really discouraged and probably made that person feel, well, what's the point of this role if we can't do these things? So I think I could have done a lot better to set expectations. Let's start just with recognition. Let's start with, employee of the month type stuff and build it from the ground up instead of, hey, put you in this role and not define it as well as I should have. And then we get into these frustrating back and forths.
Good.
What about employing those who may have special needs?
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked with a number of special needs folks over the years. I love the genuineness. That's one of my favorite things, that they're very comfortable sharing their heart. Are you asking just if that's something that we do?
I mean, is that what kind of guidelines or what kind of process do you go through if there is somebody who has special needs?
Yeah.
Obviously, yes, you're right. They're going to be some of your best workers.
Yeah.
You guys are reliable.
Yeah.
But social settings can always be a variable as well. So how do you kind of navigate that? And is that something you encourage at your specific profession?
Yeah, absolutely encourage. And I would just say the biggest thing that I try and teach our leaders is how can they do the job? Can they do the job the same way that we wouldn't want to discriminate between any other employee? We want to give them the same respect that anybody else would have. Can they communicate? That doesn't mean the exact way that you would think, but can they effectively communicate things getting done? Can they, sometimes we'll put those folks in a dining room setting because they're very good with just maintaining, those types of scenarios. Can they clean tables? I had a recent applicant who we didn't end up hiring, but we talked a lot about they may not have been able to do order taking roles because of the challenge of it. And they admitted that. And I said, hey, that's okay. What if we just consider, you just have to be creative about what can this person do? How could they contribute in a way that they get to be a part of the team and feel successful? And you're right, they can be some of the absolute best workers.
Awesome. Got another minute or two. Yes, ma'am.
In regards to feedback that you've received, what makes employees excited to come and work at Chick-fil-A?
We're very blessed to hit the ground running with a brand that already has a reputation for care, and I get to put my spin on what that care looks like in my business, but we really do get to start very well on the front end. So we get applicants that I didn't have to build the brand from Truett Cathy starting it decades ago. I get to inherit applicants and start from that point. What was the question part? I'm sorry.
What makes them excited to come work at Chick-fil-A? I mean, you
Yeah.
gotta look forward to
Yep.
work. I mean, that's part of happiness. Like,
You're right. Yeah. So I would say Chick-fil-A does a great job of feeling like a small business, even though it is a very big business. I was just telling someone earlier that Chick-fil-A does a great job of their secret sauce is me. And that's not me trying to be really prideful here because that's a big responsibility. But my role, I get to be caring for my team. Chick-fil-A is not a huge believer in an owner who's not present in the business. And so me getting to be a part of this business, Truett Cathy started it. He ran it as a family business with his wife over many decades. I get to do the same with my wife. They get to know the owner. They get to have the ability to change things in the business. It doesn't have to feel as bureaucratic maybe. You know, things are set this way and they're only ever going to be done this way. There's a lot of autonomy that I have Chick-fil-A gives me very wide guardrails in a lot of ways. I get to give those guardrails to my team as well, and they enjoy getting to be a part of that. They get to enjoy knowing their operator, and I would say the values that Chick-fil-A has aligns really well with a family atmosphere, a great first job opportunity, kind of what I was mentioning before of get to learn conflict resolution, work with people who are different from you, how to show up on time, all these things.
Cool. All right, let's give them a hand. Thank you very much for coming out. Appreciate that. He'll be here for the next couple hours if you have any questions.